Alright, it is time to get into the Baku GP observations, and it was it was a bland race, I suppose. The race was interesting until until the Ferraris went pop. And I suppose we might as well start there. So, the Ferraris went pop, both of them. What does this mean for Ferrari going forward? What this means is that whatever upgrade they put into the car at Spain, Leclerc's engine going pop over there was the smoking gun. They have problems. Well, until their next scheduled upgrade window, which I am going to assume is Silverstone. But all that aside, Ferrari, they have problems right now. And that is that they're stuck with an upgrade that pushes the car out of its reliability envelope, and they aren't exactly an Alpine who have bigger budget, quite frankly. Now, to my understanding, the engine budgets and development budgets are separate things, or that might just be the engine manufacturing budget. Either way, I don't see them walking out of this cul-de-sac in a hurry. Ferrari, I don't see them getting out of the situation in a hurry. Frankly, I am still surprised that they didn't have reliability issues earlier on in the season. Same goes for Mercedes. I'm just surprised that we're only talking about Ferrari having this reliability concern or that reliability concern now in the season. Like, we're 7 races in now. This is the only time we're actually talking about it, on account of both of their cars failing to finish. Now, what exactly was the gremlin in the cars? I don't know. I'm not particularly sure. Well, assuming that the ICU on the Leclerc's car specifically, because I think Sainz's retirement was a hydraulic issue. But assuming the ICU hasn't cracked or something, the engine manifold isn't cracked or something on Leclerc's car, it should be fine. There's one interesting thing to note. It's one interesting to note in all of this, regardless of whether it's a turbo issue for Ferrari or an AMG UK issue for Ferrari or something. Regardless of all of that, there is one thing to note. Ferrari wanted to run repairs on their engine. I'm not sure which car. It was not mentioned which car, probably Leclerc's car, but either way. They wanted to run repairs on one of their engines. And this is something that Red Bull have been allowed to do for a few Grand Prix now. And they were barred from doing so, Ferrari. So I'm just here for the Verstappen parade now. It doesn't seem like we're going to have a championship fight. Even like a mock championship fight, we know Leclerc's not winning, but at least let us see some heavy sparring type of. We're not even going to get that. And I mentioned luck in the previous upload. On some level, Ferrari are unlucky here. They are very unlucky. And on the other hand, Verstappen, he's very lucky. The type of weekend that he's run here and netted himself a win off of. He's very lucky. But a Ferrari, they've just been unlucky here in Baku. Do they have a way out of this reliability problem? Not anytime soon. Well, I say not anytime soon, but the Silverstone isn't actually that far away. This is me assuming that they actually rectify the car in some way for Silverstone. How do I say this in like the easiest way? Leclerc's championship fight is over. It's over. Now, sure, Red Bull might have an engine go pop next Grand Prix, for all we know. Right in Montreal, they might have an engine go pop there. It might be Verstappen's engine, for all we know. But by this point, especially with the form that Verstappen is in, well, I suppose the stat did die in Monaco of him winning every Grand Prix that he finishes. But if we exclude Monaco, then he's won every Grand Prix that he's finished. And that's some dominant form to be in. That is some dominant form. And Leclerc, he's securing poles every weekend, and it's just not going to be enough. It's just not going to be enough because the Ferraris, they just fall back slowly over race distance. They just fall back slowly. So aside from them having their engine issues currently, their power unit issues, aside from that, they don't have a cohesive package to really challenge here. And mind you, Ferrari themselves have said that they are, this season for them is them just learning how to challenge again, how to be competitive again, which to me is just a big cop out. I can't believe Binotto has actually said that, with the media voice recorders going. I can't believe he's actually said that, but he said that. So all that's left to do is take him at face value, and yeah, that means Ferrari are not a challenger this season. They might look close in some race, in some Grand Prix, in some races, some weekends. They might look close. They might catch a few wins here and there. But internally, they're not actually concerned with challenging for the championship this season, and that's disappointing. More than anything, that's disappointing, because I think Leclerc is fast enough to challenge this season. Whether he's learned enough hard lessons along the way, I'm not too sure. Seems he might still be learning some as we go, and really, he might even be getting some metaphysical clapback for for his tirade on the radio in Monaco. Mind you, I say his tirade on the radio at Monaco was justified. That was fully justified. Mind you, if that was happening to, I don't know, Michael Schumacher, oh, he would have been livid. He would have been talking on the radio about that pit stop scenario until the end of the Grand Prix. Would have talked Ross Brawn's and John Todd's ears off if that happened to him. So yes, might Leclerc be getting some metaphysical clapback for for Monaco? Yes, that's very much in the air. But both cars dropped out for Ferrari. Both cars dropped out, so it's less a metaphysical thing and more Ferrari failing to cross a T or dot an I. Alright, Ferrari have dropped the ball on their engine here. And mind you, their engine was always going to be really finely balanced in terms of reliability. Just with the way their car is designed, right? And the way they have to actually mount the radiators inside the body, with the way their side parts are shaped, they were always going to be somewhat marginal with reliability. So it was really impressive that they had such strong reliability up until now. But now the real test of the season begins, now that they've thrown some upgrades on it and they're pushing the envelope of the car a bit. Now the real test begins. And so far they're failing. Just the way it is. Science, I mean, there's no real comments to make about the drivers this weekend, you know, at Ferrari. There's no real comments to make. But yeah, Sainz, he could have qualified better, but it's academic at this point. He didn't even finish the Grand Prix through no fault of his own. Right, and Leclerc, he's I don't even know, like, which driver would he be channeling right now to be racking up poles like this? Oh, he's channeling prime Sebastian Vettel. That's what he's doing. And you know, you can channel him all season long. You can take Seb's powers like that, and yeah, it's probably not going to amount to anything. Why is that? Because Ferrari, they just dropping the ball a bit too often, but I digress. Alright, next point. I definitely want to talk about this one, and this is Günther Steiner making notes. I'm not sure if this was Ted. I'm not sure if it was Ted or James quoting him. I believe it was Ted, but anyway, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant who was making the quote. The fact is that they were quoting Günther, and Günther pointed out that all the teams have scored a point, at least 8 points, in the first 6 races of the season. Now, I don't know if there's any statisticians, some stat nerds out here, or what have you. When was the last time that happened? Every team scoring a point in the first 6 races of the season. And what exactly does that uncanny stat actually mean for the regulations? Because a lot of people are kicking up a fuss as to, well, are these regulations actually doing what they said on the tin? And here's the thing, right? As soon as every team has scored a point, and we're not even near the halfway point of the season, right? But every team has scored a point. What does that mean? That means we are in the plug and play formula. I've talked about the plug and play formula on some other videos on this channel. What do I mean by the plug and play formula? I mean every weekend, in the midfield at least, every team is going to be top of the pops. Now, on some weekends, I've predicted Alpine to be top of the pops. I expected them to be top of the pops in Miami. I was wrong on that. But they end up being top of the pops somewhere else. Right, likewise, Tracing Martin. We'll get to Tracing Martin. They may actually hold off on that Tracing Martin thing. But for every team to score a point 6 races in, that's uncanny. I've not seen that. I have not seen that. The only other season that might be worth referencing is maybe 2011 or something, or whichever season that was when Maldonado won at Spain. Was that 2012 maybe? Somewhere there. I mean, that might be the only season worth referencing, but I don't think every team scored a point so early on in the season, right? Usually we would be approaching Hungary or something, and there would still be a bottom running team looking for a point. It's not going to happen this season. Everyone has their points. Haas, they got points. Williams, they got a point. Tracing Martin, they got some points. So for anyone who's a vocal detractor of the change of regulations, and let me separate this from the Mercedes thing, right? This isn't about they changed the regulations to unseat Mercedes or anything. It's not about that. This is just about the regulations were changed because their fan the regulations were changed because the fans were quizzed as to what they wanted, and they supposedly wanted more overtaking or quote unquote closer racing. And here's the thing, right? Like it or not, the way the current regs have shaped out, if that's what you wanted from the regs, they are delivering that. They are indeed delivering that. Now, here's the thing. Because people are going to have complaints about, the regulations aren't producing quote-unquote close racing, or it's uncompetitive. There's only 1 or 2 teams that are top of the pops. And I already addressed this in the regulatory complaints and fan misunderstandings video. I already addressed this there, in that the way these regulations have come out the box, they're really good relative to every other set of regulations that let me not speak for the whole history of F1, but for every other set of regulation changes that I've seen, and I've been watching since '97, if anyone wants some type of reference. But this is some of the closest out the box gaps between the cars that I've seen for a change of regulations. So if, once again, with this change of regulations, the fans are not getting what they wanted, even though the regulations are delivering on that, far as I can see, well, I would be one to say stop asking the fans what they want from the racing, because they don't even know what they want from the racing. Because it's delivered that in spades right now. The racing's closer, cars can follow closer, there's more overtaking. There isn't as much overtaking as the first switch to the hybrid era. That was 2014 to 16, 17 regs. Yeah, 2014 to 2016, I'm pretty sure that's the gap. But those regs there, those had the most overtaking I've ever seen in F1. Excluding whatever, like some historical data people might pull up. But having watched since '97, Those rigs had the most overtaking. These rigs have the second most overtaking. And in current rigs, yeah, the cars can follow really close to each other. Mind you, it's not as close as, I suppose, like late 90s racing, perhaps early 2000s, but mostly late 90s. It's not as close as that. Right? I mean, a train did develop in Monaco, but it wasn't really organic, right? There was a driver at the front who was forcing a train to form. But back in the 90s, you'd have like 3-car or 4-car trains, and they would be nose to tail. No DRS back then, but they would be nose to tail. You wouldn't be able to separate them. You would be wondering how the drivers are driving that close without crashing into each other. Now, these cars don't follow that closely, and that was only a phenomenon that you could see with those 90s cars at a Monaco. So it's not, that I'm not saying that was the gospel. Every circuit that, they're just on each other's tails like this. No, that's not what I'm saying. But in terms of organic racing, where the cars just end up being close to each other at the end of the day, these regulations are delivering that. And there's really not much to complain about in regards to the new regs, aside from porpoising / bouncing issues. That's the only real thing to have a complaint about: porpoising and bouncing. And I suppose the porpoising is becoming backbreaking work. In some circuits, it is undoubtedly backbreaking work. But otherwise, that's not really a gotta pick my words a little here. That's not really a failure of the regulations that there's porpoising. That's more teams just chasing performance that they know their car can't actually manifest without porpoising. And some people might say bring in minimum ride heights or something. There's too many problems with doing that. There's far too many problems with doing that. At the end of the day, everyone just simply needs to find a solution to minimize the porpoising. Because if I follow Adrian Newey's school of thought, well, he says you can never eliminate porpoising, especially in ground effects cars. You will never eliminate porpoising. You simply have to learn how to live with it. So, can these teams learn how to live with porpoising right now? Well, if it were up to me, I would be mandating the skids or something, making those a compulsory piece to have on the cars. The skids, the skates, I don't know what people want to call them. Ice skates right now, they're calling them, those Red Bull ice skates. That's what people are calling them right now. I would make those a mandatory thing to have on the cars. Now, supposedly, every team now has their own version of ice skates, and and they've probably missed the mark as to how they're supposed to operate, but I digress. Every team has them now. That's what commentary team are saying. Whether I believe that or not, that's simply what they've put out as the gospel. And regardless of whether teams had those skates or not, everyone's still porpoising up and down the grid. And this will be a good time to segue into Mercedes, I suppose. Alright, so to address the Mercedes issue, here's the thing. Alright, and this is gonna be this might be a spicy take for all I know. But here's the thing in terms of Mercedes and porpoising, right? No one is telling Mercedes to run the car that aggressively except Mercedes. They're the only ones who are telling them that, we gotta run the car, with a Rizla paper separating the car from the road. They're the ones saying that internally. It's not the FIA that's telling them to run the car that low. It's not the other teams that are telling them to run the car that low. It's just internally at Mercedes. They're saying, yes, this will make the car go faster, and so they do it. Now, is that a problem? It's a problem for the Mercedes drivers, not a problem for anyone else. It's not anyone else's problem. Mind you, I must say for posterity, everyone was having problems with porpoising. Everyone. Even the Red Bulls, if you want to actually believe that. But yeah, seriously, even the Red Bulls were seeing some porpoising, notable porpoising, on Friday. Now, of course, they dialed theirs out going into the race. They were riding a lot better. Well, they always ride a lot better than other cars, but they were just riding a lot better relative to themselves than they were on Friday during the race, and Saturday as well. It's not really about how low Red Bull can run the car, it's more about how low other teams can run their cars without breaking their own drivers' backs. And some people might say, oh, bring in active suspension, or bring in a minimum ride height, or get rid of the Venturi tunnels. You know, a lot of people are getting some wild suggestions out. I'm sure some of that is from a well-intentioned yet vitriolic Mercedes fan base. I'm pretty sure a lot of that is coming from that angle. But likewise, Mercedes, they could just fix their car. Likewise, every team could just fix their car, right? Mind you, Mercedes are really the only ones with some type of excuse, and no one else really has that same excuse, because everyone else has more development money than Mercedes, more wind tunnel time than Mercedes, more CFD time than Mercedes. You see, everyone just has more than Mercedes, just on account of how the budget cap works. And so everyone should be able to find a realistically fast solution for porpoising. Not to cure it completely, because according to Adrian Newey, the guy who's designed the best car on the grid in terms of handling porpoising and the new dynamics of the Venturi tunnels and all of that, he says there is no cure for porpoising. You can only make it tolerable for the drivers. And he's gone into the season with that understanding, so it shows on the car. No one else has had that understanding going in. And some people might still not have that understanding even now of you won't be able to get rid of it, you simply have to make it tolerable. And it's very likely Mercedes don't even have that understanding, at least yet. The understanding of you cannot get rid of porpoising, you can just change its flavor and make it tolerable. Less Marmite, more jam. But here's the thing, if this porpoising thing continues with Mercedes, and I'm not expecting it to continue, maybe Monza it might come back, maybe Paul Ricard it might come back, but it seems to only occur when presented with a circuit like Baku. And I pointed out when Mercedes got their upgrades that Baku was an extreme environment to test whether their porpoising solution was a final one or not. And Monaco presented other problems in terms of the wheel rims and those bouncing off the bumps on the circuit, right? Baku was always my tester for whether Mercedes had fixed their porpoising or not. Now, does this mean they're going to porpoise at other circuits? No, it's probably very few circuits that they will porpoise on. Mind you, they might in fact experience some porpoising in Canada, because Canada is a very fast circuit. It's a dated circuit as well, so the road has character. The road has character that perhaps is not present at Bahrain or at Catalonia, because Catalonia gets resurfaced often. But yes, heading to Montreal, it's a very fast circuit, very unique aero setup. It's just a very unique circuit in general, just like Baku. So that Mercedes car will be tested in a different way, i.e., does it still porpoise at high speeds in a low downforce spec? Because if it does, then Mercedes will probably be worried about events like Monza, right? They'll probably be worried about that. Mind you, every team has to be worried about that. Every team. Well, any team that has a driver who's over 27 or 28, and they're not in a Red Bull, in case someone pulls out Sergio Perez, But every driver who fits that description, they're all complaining about the porpoising, maybe breaking their spines. Right? It's not just Sir Lewis Hamilton who's complaining. And mind you, Sir Lewis doesn't actually complain about it. A lot of the drivers are not actually quote unquote complaining about it. They're just stating what they're experiencing. And I gather that rubs a bunch of people the wrong way, but I digress. All these drivers who have quotables in the media complaining about porpoising and back pains and what have you, that's just their lived experience right now. It's not that they're actually complaining like Horner might insinuate or something. But that really is just their lived experience. And it's not like the drivers... You see, this is one of those instances where the teams and the drivers won't protect each other. They won't protect themselves from themselves. And the FIA is going to be very hands-off, because it's correct to be hands-off, regardless of how people might feel about it. Sir Lewis's back is being broken by this car, or what have you. Regardless of all of that, even Daniel Ricciardo's back's being broken by the car. Gasly's back is being broken by the car. I'm not sure if Sebastian has complained too much about it. He's complaining about other things regardless. But it's no coincidence that all these guys are complaining, and you can't really... you can't just shift the rules in order to make it go away, right? Because then you hamper other teams who have perhaps found better solutions in order to contain porpoising, and they would have less intellectual capital than the likes of Mercedes. So you see, Mercedes don't really have an excuse as to why their car is porpoising and why they're breaking their star drivers back and whatever. Well, both of them are complaining about back pain, really, but they don't really have an excuse for that. They don't really have an excuse, and it's in bad taste to say, "I'll just introduce active suspensions or what have you." That's in bad taste. Because if the same were happening in reverse, well, no one would be happy about it. But anyway. Alright, so from there, might as well address George Russell and his podium finish. Very good podium finish. I'd love to heap praise on him or something, but it's not really founded. It's not like he's raced anyone to get the third, or the Ferraris have dropped out with reliability issues, and it's not like he's then threatened the Red Bulls or something, or even had to, defend a valiant charge from someone coming from behind. It's not like he's had to do that. It's not like he's had to defend against Gasly or something. That didn't happen. He just drove a clean race, got to the finish with minimal fuss, drove a clean weekend as well, I should probably say. And that's really all there is to it. It's not like he's done anything, it's not like he's done anything spectacular or special or noteworthy in getting this podium. Yes, he's gotten the podium. The podium itself is probably noteworthy, but it stops being a notable news piece. Because we've seen him grab podiums in the car when the top two teams have their issues. We've seen him do that. It's not anything new. We've seen Sir Lewis Hamilton do that, so that's not anything new. And the drive wasn't exactly anything to write home about. It was just a clean drive. Keep your nose clean and don't get in trouble, and just make it to the finish, and boom, you'll probably get a result. This is probably how I would have, this would probably be an assessment that would fit for a lot of drivers if we didn't get an anomaly of a Baku GP, in that nothing actually happened in this GP, and there wasn't even a safety car or anything and people might pull up like a virtual safety car. It's not a real safety car. Right, but there wasn't a safety car or red flag or anything to shake things up. The race kind of played out how it would play out, with no major incidents. No major incident. There was nothing to really shift the meta of the Grand Prix. There was nothing to really shift the finishing order, or even make anyone sweat about where they might finish. There was nothing of the sort. It was just a pretty stock standard Grand Prix. George Russell drove a stock standard race. The whole keep it safe, keep the car safe, make it to the finish. That would be a worthwhile assessment if we got the crazy Baku Grand Prix. Didn't happen though. Didn't happen. And there's other ramifications about this Grand Prix not being crazy, but that didn't happen. Alright, a note from commentary team. Sergio Perez is driving like a man who won Monaco. Now this is me harking back to my Monaco versus Vegas, or was that Lamb versus Prestige? Or one of those. That was me harking back to that video. Well, at least the commentary team did, in that Perez, after winning Monaco, has evidently unlocked a new level of accuracy about his driving, and perhaps even some aggression. Right? Why do I say some aggression? Because, well, in news after the race, Horner was noted saying that, oh well, Perez was uncharacteristically being hard on his rear tires. So Perez, he's not driving the same way that he was before this Monaco win, evidently. Well, to Horner, that's evident enough. And you could even see it in qualifying. Oh, Perez was really on it in qualifying, by the way, I must say. It's no accident that he out-qualified Verstappen. That's no accident. He was really on it. You know, seeing the way he was driving here at Baku, you'd be surprised that he didn't get the pole in Monaco. But yeah, he was really on it. You know, you might expect something. You might expect a big result from him now when we head to Singapore or something. Mind you, you might also get a big result in Canada because it's also kind of like a street. Well, people call it a street circuit. I'm not calling it a street circuit. I think that's irresponsible. But commentary team does call it a street circuit, and it's got the barriers right next to the circuit, so you do have to be able to pilot the car between walls. And Perez, he seems to be very good at that right now. Very good. Best on the grid? I wouldn't go that far, but he's definitely better than Verstappen at that right now. At least in a hot lap setting, you know, in a qualifying spec. But yeah, I just wanted to make this note here. And someone on commentary said this, I believe it was James. But anyway. And what did they say? They said Perez is driving like a man who won Monaco. And this would have been the gear that Leclerc opened up, along with whatever gear winning your home Grand Prix grants you. This would have been the gear that he opened up by winning Monaco. But it's just not his year. Anyway. Alright, I want to talk about Alpine's skinny rear wing. And it's quite a unique rear wing. But I don't want to talk about their skinny rear wing in terms of, well, are other teams now going to have to copy it, or will it not actually be a good concept going forward? Why do I ask that? Well, because Alpine simply moved backwards for this Baku race. And that skinny rear wing didn't have them harrying anyone's gearboxes or whatever. You didn't have them doing that. They were having their gearbox harried by everyone else who doesn't have the skinny rear wing. But the skinny rear wing is a super interesting development. Really it is. Because if that wing can also do high downforce work, if it can do high downforce setups as well, then it might grant them a really big advantage in some places. It really might grant them a really big, like where would it be really powerful? Like Spa, maybe it would be really powerful because you've got the long Kemmel straight and the run from La Source and the run through Blanchimont at the end of the lap. And if that skinny rear wing that Alpine have can work in high downforce tracks as well, You tilt the wing a little bit more, gives you more downforce. But when you're going down the straights, it's however it works, and you still have high top speed relative to, well, everyone who doesn't have a skinny rear wing. It might be a really powerful addition to Alpine's arsenal. It might be so powerful an addition that other teams also have to get it. Maybe, maybe not. But I do consider that development really fascinating and worth noting, because it's not the usual type of development that you would see in a development race season. First season of new race. It's not the type of development you would see. I mean, yeah, people would bring new rear wings, new front wings, new bodywork, the whole lot. Like, that's all standard, but you would never really see someone, ooh, I've got a super skinny rear wing to try out. And we're not trying it out at Monza, we're trying it out at a different circuit. That's very unique. That doesn't happen often. So it does lead me to question, well, how exactly do these cars find their performance? And a lot of it will be underneath the car, with the Venturi tunnels. A lot of it will be there. But for Alpine to have the the verve, the gumption to run this skinny rear wing, away from Monza. Yeah, Baku, some people are gonna say, oh, it's low downforce circuit and what have you. You gotta have low wing angles to tackle that long straight. Yeah, people are gonna say all of that, but that wasn't exactly common at Baku before the season. If people are gonna believe that, usually, Baku's too new a circuit for there to be a usually. But before these regulations, teams would actually run a high downforce setup at Baku, or at least a medium downforce, a compromising setup. Different cars, different eras, different spec, the whole thing. But now, because the cars generate so much of their downforce performance from the underbody of the car, well, it's allowing teams to try things like the skinny rear wing at Alpine. And if it proves to be good, believe you me, everyone's gonna have to have a skinny rear wing. Everyone, unless it's so good that the FIA ban it or something, which I'd be very surprised if that happened. Anyway. Next point, I guess people are saying there's been a bit of a flare-up at McLaren. Now, am I calling it a flare-up? No, that doesn't read like a flare-up to me. It just reads like Lando wanting to keep racing, really. People are gonna say I'm making excuses for him, or he's entitled or what have you. Like, on some level, this is gonna be controversial. On some level, he's earned that. Especially within that McLaren team, he's earned that. Now, of course, maybe Lando, he's playing, his own duel of the fates over there. Who knows? Who knows, right? Maybe he's got duel of the fates running in his head and he wants to finish ahead of Ricciardo regardless of the scenario. But it was harrying him all the way to the finish line. I don't mind that, really. Me personally, I don't mind that. I can see why people would feel some way about it, react some way to it. But really, it's neither here nor there. It would be one thing if he actually overtook Ricciardo. That would be a different thing. Then this would be a completely different thing. Mind you, I would probably like that action too, because I liked it when Seb did it with Multi 21. And the reason I liked it when Seb did it is because, realistically, you don't know when you're gonna challenge for a championship again. Realistically, this might be the last year you get to do it. So for the team to now tell you in a championship challenging season, like, oh, just let the other car win. You gotta be a really different type of guy to let that happen. Really a different type of guy. Now, some people are gonna point out Rosberg done that, Sir Lewis Hamilton done that. Yeah, these guys have done that. Rosberg, he's got a caveat around him. I'll give you that. He's got a big caveat around him. But at the end of the day, here, Lando, nothing's happened. Nothing's happened. Yes, Ricciardo has scored his first blood of the Battle of the Fates, as it were. He's scored his first blood now, with the help of the team, but he's done so. And perhaps now he will be convinced in his own head that he can, in fact, be faster than Lando Norris. Whether that actually bears out over the coming Grand Prix, we shall see. We shall really see. But otherwise, you know, Lando, he's done nothing. Realistically, he's done nothing. And quite frankly, he's presenting an attitude that you want to see in your favorite driver. Some people might say, oh, you should play the team game. Well, you can play the team game until it's no longer time to play the team game, you see. But you get playing it to the end. There isn't really anything to complain about. He feels sore about having to let Ricciardo finish ahead of him. He feels some way about it. Lando Norris, this is. He feels some way about that. He'll probably take it into the next few Grand Prix and maybe blitz the timing sheets in some places. Anyway, that's updates on McLaren's Battle of the Fates. It's topical this weekend because the team gave out some orders. Anyway. Guan Yu Zhou. Here's the next bullet point here. Guan Yu Zhou, he's reached the boiling point with Alfa Romeo. And, you know, commentary team were giving him some stick about it. I get the impression that they forget that he's had reliability issues in like just about every Grand Prix this season, barring Bahrain, I think, and barring Monaco, I believe. But he's had reliability issues at every other Grand Prix this season. He's well within his rights to have reached boiling point now. And why is that? Well, Guan Yu Zhou, he's definitely got corporate sponsors behind him. His corporate sponsors are looking at how Bottas is performing in the same car. And they're undoubtedly saying, well, you got to get a little bit more out of this if you want us to, you know, if you want us to retain you as our asset. And this is just the way it is in F1. So for Zhou to, you know, for Zhou to be pulled out at the start of the Grand Prix with a reliability issue when the car looked strong to get a points finish in his hand, right? Never mind Bottas' hand, but in his hand. Yeah, he's well within his rights to be upset about that. He's well within his rights to flare up about that. And quite frankly, Alfa Romeo, I mean, what could they really say to him? What could they really say to him? Because this isn't the first Grand Prix. It would be one thing if it was, you know, the first, the second, or the third Grand Prix that he's had a reliability issue in Guan Yu Zhou. That would be one thing. This is like the fifth Grand Prix now. It's been essentially every Grand Prix. And at one point I was saying Alonso is perhaps the unluckiest man in F1. Well, it's Zhou right now. It's undoubtedly Guan Yu Zhou. Because he just can't catch a break. And you know, if he proves to be unlucky, I mean, that's something a team will get rid of a driver for. If a driver just always has reliability issues regardless of whoever's working on the car, you know, if you got some bad voodoo around you like that, well, you're just gonna make life for an F1 team difficult, expensive, and you'll be gone. You'll be out. You'll be out long before you get to prove your medal, as it were. So Zhou, he's just aware that the clock is ticking. You might be the only rookie on the grid, but that clock is ticking. And there's no guarantee that, you know, the team will actually give him 2 years in the car, what have you, or let's see what you really got over a second season. There's no guarantee that will happen. There's no guarantee at all. And if that won't happen, then he's well within his rights to flare up a bit when nothing seems to go right for him. He's well within his rights to do that. You know, it would be problematic for Zhou if he wasn't feeling pressure after all these unforced retirements and what have you. Then it would be problematic for him. That he is feeling pressure, that he is going off on the team, that's a good thing. A rookie or not, who cares? It's a useful component for him to have about him as a driver. That regardless of how small the result, he still wants to chase it. That's a useful component to have about him. And hopefully Zhou makes the grid next season. Or at least hopefully his reliability issues get solved for the rest of this season. But if not, hopefully he makes the grid next season and he can actually show what he's got. Because right now he hasn't been able to show anything. He has scored a point, mind you, but he hasn't been able to show anything regardless after that. Alright, it's time for that duct tape scenario. It's time for that one. And here's the thing. It's not really a problem what AlphaTauri have done in terms of repairing the car. You know, I've seen duct tape be used in various places on these cars. Is it perhaps problematic that it's on the rear wing? Yeah, it's problematic. But they didn't, you know, the FIA or the stewards, they didn't tell the car to retire. They gave the car a black and orange flag. That means you've got damage on your car, go get it fixed, and you can keep on racing. And that's exactly what they did. Now here's the thing, we wouldn't have to be dealing with the optics of duct taping a broken rear wing back together. We wouldn't have to deal with those optics if DRS just wasn't here. And you know, I'm perhaps not the one to be listening to on this DRS issue, because I'm like anti-DRS stan over here. I'm not a fan of it at all. I want my racing to be pure, organic, and for outcomes to not be decided by, you know, a DRS of all the things. You know, of all the filthy things that they put in Formula 1. But yeah, the rear wing got duct taped. That was deemed good enough to see out the finish. And the car did indeed see out the finish. Otherwise, that's just a little interesting point worth noting, where we wouldn't be talking about, oh, the DRS failed, had to be repaired, if there was no DRS. Of course, people would complain, oh, how are you going to get overtaking then? Well, I'd prefer that there be a little harder to overtake, quite frankly. You know, F1 needs more jeopardy, quite frankly. More jeopardy, less resolutions, but I digress. Alright, last point of the video. Tracing Martin are perhaps done sandbagging. Now I'll know for sure after Silverstone where exactly they fall on the performance matrix. That will be the time to really know. But here in Baku, it looks like they stopped sandbagging as hard. Mind you, they also got a good results in Monaco, but Monaco was a lottery anyway, so you can't really, we can't really analyze that result one way or the other. But here in Baku, it was a clean Grand Prix. It was a clean Grand Prix. There weren't heavy stoppages, there was no safety car period, there was no red flag. Just a few VSCs, you'll see that at every Grand Prix. And oh, look at that, Aston Martin pulled out a strong result with their traced up car. They pulled out a really strong result. Car looked good in race trim. Sebastian Vettel was moving up the grid rather effortlessly for a bit. And so here's where I wonder, well, were they sandbagging? Did they get their data from Spain? They were satisfied with where the car was, and then, well, let's just sandbag it up a bit. Let's throw some extra ballast in the car, so that, all these all these probes here and there from Red Bull and other teams and what have you, they just go away. And once they've fallen away like they have now suddenly the performance of the car just kicks up a gear. Oh, how did that happen? You know, there's one interesting thing to note about this Tracing Martin situation, and that's that the only team, well, I'm talking about the front runners now in regards to Red Bull, Ferrari and Mercedes, the only team who doesn't get any information out of that whole tracing scenario is Ferrari. I don't know if Ferrari fans are wise to this. They're the only team who are not going to be getting any info, even info that they could analog to something else, right? They're not going to get any info. A Red Bull can at least see how a Mercedes engine would perform in a car that's similarly packaged to theirs. They can at least see that. Mercedes can at least see how their engine would perform in a car that's similarly packaged to a Red Bull. Ferrari, they're the odd man out. They don't get any information. They just get the same information that we get out here on the streets. Well, not exactly. They get a little bit more than that. But relatively speaking, they're working from the same sheet of information on that Tracing Martin car that I am. They don't have any inside scoop. And people might say, oh, Mercedes aren't going to look at the data. Well, you say that. Someone in Mercedes is going to see that Aston Martin data. Someone's going to see it. Are Red Bull going to see some data from Tracing Martin? No, that's not going to happen. But they do have friends in the space, you know, and the FIA would have us believe that, you know, Red Bull is so tight-knit that even when you take engineers out, when you take engineers and designers out of that space, they still design a car that's similar to Red Bull's aero philosophy. So it's undoubtedly, you know, these guys are super close-knit. They're still talking with each other on your Skype or Zoom or what have you, making calls across the world, WhatsApping, you know, it's probably still got a WhatsApp group. And some things might slip in there. That would just be a direct line of info for Red Bull. Otherwise, realistically, they got the same point of view as the rest of us. But they'll know exactly how much of that Tracing Martin is directly copied from them. And, you know, they'll be able to make use of whatever optics the car presents. Quite frankly, they'll be able to make use of those optics better than Ferrari, on account of having a philosophy so similar to all those guys who left the Red Bull stable. Ferrari are the only ones who don't have that info. And Tracing Martin have stopped sandbagging. I want to see what the other teams say in response to them. Because as soon as Red Bull dropped their investigation, you know, Red Bull was satisfied. They said, okay, you know what, we're going to drop this investigation on Tracing Martin. You definitely haven't taken our data. Right, or so they'd have us believe. But they dropped it, and suddenly, you know, Vettel is driving up the grid in Baku. It'll be very interesting to see what Tracing Martin do in Canada. I'm most interested for Silverstone. Can only wait to get there. Anyway, that's the GP observations. An anomalous Baku GP on account of this was the calm one. And yeah, nothing much to note really, just whatever's in this video, probably more than is needed in this video. But anyway, that's the vid. Peace.
Hell breezy. Let me show you how to keep the dice rolling when you're doing that thing over there. Hey, 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 let's go. Cause I'm feeling like I'm running and I'm feeling like I gotta get away, get away, get away. Better know that I don't and I won't ever stop. Cause you know I gotta win every day. Go. See, you really wanna pop me. Go. Just know that you will never flop me. And I know that I gotta be a little cocky. Go. You ain't never gonna stop me. Every time I come a nigga gotta set it, then I gotta go and then I gotta get it, then I gotta blow and then I gotta shut it. Any little thing a nigga think that he be doing, cause it doesn't matter, cause I'm gonna dead it. Then I'm gonna murder everything and anything about it. Boom, about a bing. I gotta do a lot of things to make it clearer to a couple niggas that I always win and then I gotta get it again and again and again. And I be doing it to death and now I move a little foul. Nigga better call a ref and everybody know my style. Niggas know that I'm the best when it comes to doing this and I be banging on my chest and I bang in the east and I banging in the west and I come to give you more and I will never give you less. You will hear it in the street and you can read it in the press. Do you really wanna know what's next? Let's go. See the way we on it and we all up in the race and you know we gotta go now try to keep up with the pace and we struggling and hustling and set it and get it and we always gotta do it, take it to another place, gotta taste it and I gotta grab it and I gotta cut all